Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. It is quite ironic as the nuclear superpower that has been threatening the whole world to destroy it with their intercontinental ballistic missiles does a test of said intercontinental ballistic missiles and they explode in a glorious fireworks on the territory of Russia. So recently, Russia tried testing their Sarmat missile on the territory of Russia, and it ended up blowing up right there on the test site, leaving a huge crater behind. Now, I usually give you some kind of curiosities for you to laugh at, because laughing at Russia is very important. And the curiosity that you might not know is that in the last 6 tests of these Sarmat missiles, 5 of them ended in failure. So not the most successful missile ever. Moreover, this missile is actually additionally has a level of curiosity because Russia had intercontinental ballistic missiles, well, during the Soviet times, that were pretty much identical to what these Sarmat missiles are. The issue with those missiles is that the engines for those missiles were produced in Ukraine, and since Russia decided to destroy everything in Ukraine and decided to invade Ukraine, now they don't have the access to the engines of these missiles. And because Russia, for the most part, in the whole history of their existence, have been stealing technology rather than coming up with them themselves, they are failing to figure out how to make a missile where everything, the rest, is exactly the same as it was before. Another reason why they should not have invaded Ukraine, and they should have stayed exactly where their borders end. In the meantime, President Zelensky is visiting the United States to present his victory plan to the allies, and in the meantime, he actually went to Scranton, Pennsylvania to visit the factory that is the true arsenal of democracy. Men and women that are working at this facility are contributing to the arsenal of democracy, the true fight for freedom. Every time we think about the politicians that are trying to secure some kind of negotiated position stronger for Ukraine, or people that do enough or not enough for Ukraine, we need to understand that it is because of these guys, the workers, the proper blue-collar job holders that are laboring in their positions, long shifts, most probably, I don't know, but I'm expecting that it could be long shifts, and they are actually supplying the free world with the weapons that it needs. Thank you so much to the people of United States, and especially the workers at Scranton and every other military facility that are producing weapons to help Ukraine defend itself. But let's go to the map, where we are going to be looking at what's happening on the front lines, because situation is quite tense, and we're going to have an update today on what's there, and we're going to talk a little bit more after that about the possible futures. So in the Kursk region, remember, Russia here has an advantage compared to Ukrainians, and Ukrainians try to counterattack Russians by undercutting them in the back, which forced Russians to respond to said counterattack. And as you can see, any kind of Russian progress in the area has been halted, and Ukrainians were able to threaten the Russians enough for them to stop. So it was good. The situation around Kursk is still tense, but again, I want to underscore it for everything. Whenever we're talking about successes of Ukraine, we need to understand that 2024 is a Ukrainian year focused on defense. It's a defensive operation year, and Russians are having the advantage in resources, manpower, ammunition, artillery, shells, aviation, everything. The Western military-industrial complex is still kicking in, despite the people at Scranton producing a lot of the freedom-supporting equipment. It is still not enough, and we still need to grow our capabilities. Then there is unpleasant situation that is developing in this northern area right over here. Russians have been advancing from Pishene, and they are very close to finally achieve their goal of separating the Ukrainian-controlled territory on the east side of the Oskil River into two, which is definitely not nice for Ukrainians. It's going to complicate things. But I want you to understand that this is not the end of the world. And while it's not going to be nice, it's not going to collapse this whole area at all. So please take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. The situation in the Chasiv Yar area around Bakhmut is tense. Russians have been reporting that they've crossed the channel near the Chasiv Yar, and Ukrainians have been saying that they kicked the Russians back out. Russians said that they crossed it again. Ukrainians saying that they kicked them back out. All in all, Chasiv Yar still stands, and it's a strong fortpost, and Ukrainians are doing as much as they can. The area around New York has been again controlled by Ukrainian armed forces. There is right now already fighting in the city of Toretsk. It's the main kind of defense hub in the area. If Ukrainians will lose Toretsk, which is possible, it's going to complicate things for the southern parts of the Chasiv Yar in this area. So I would not be surprised to see that Russians potentially could try to close the pockets by the end of this year. We'll see if they will be successful or not. Situation on the Pokrovsk area is developing again slower. It's always slower than I am expecting. And while Russians are continuing with their plan, people always ask me, Georgie, you're stating that Russians are advancing, yet you're talking about this somewhat calmly. And the point is, when Avdiivka fell, it was at around the start of the year, like May, June, I believe. It's kind of blurred for me right now. But when Avdiivka fell, I told you that it was a major stronghold. And fall of Avdiivka would essentially allow Russians to capture this territory and then collapse this area over here, to then collapse Vuhledar area and completely take over this area. The point is, I was expecting this to happen essentially by the mid-end of summer. The fact that Russia is, relatively speaking, maybe halfway to this plan is actually quite impressive, knowing all of the issues that Ukrainians have been having with the shortage both of troops and the shortage of resources from the allies. The fact that there is still some defense forces that are fighting for this pocket around Nevelske is extremely impressive. The fact that Selidove, the big fort post of the Ukrainians, still stands despite the fact that Russians are kind of already overhanging from the north and overhanging from the south. So it's a very tense situation. Vuhledar, despite being now in a very vulnerable positions after Kostatinivka fell, after Vodiane has been taken, and it's still being fought for, it's actually very impressive. So don't get me wrong, there is nothing good in Ukrainians losing territory. Nothing good. But we always need to remember how fast and at what cost for the Russians. And this is, again, something we're going to come back to. And then, guys, we need to talk, because we have had a lot of new people come to this channel, and I appreciate it a lot. The point is that a lot of people that came in, they've not heard me talk and address a lot of the points about whether Ukraine should or should not surrender, whether or not Ukraine should or should not accept any kind of peace deal or in-between solution. And Petr Pavel came out with a statement. Now, Petr Pavel is a president of Czechia. He is not the person that could be considered a sellout. He's not the person that could not be considered a friend of Ukraine. He definitely is a friend of Ukraine. So hearing him say that Ukraine should be considering some kind of in-between solution with potential of losing certain territories to the Russian really makes me scratch my head. And I want to explain why, because this is very crucial to understand. I want you to start from a little bit afar. So here is a little bit of an image that I want you to look at. What you see before you is the reporter's Denis Kazansky, a Ukrainian reporter, and he's showing you here videos from his trip to Pokrovsk. What you're seeing right now before your eyes is Pokrovsk. This is the city that Russia wants to reach. This is the city that Russia will erase to absolute nothing. So I want you to take in this moment to look at what is here, how peaceful this place is, how it's set up. Here he walks around that destroyed bridge, and what else not? So he shows a lot of things. He shows about the different places that were in this city that was lovely and it was well kept, clean. The city, again, Pokrovsk, I'm going to come back to this. This is him being in Pokrovsk, which is, let me get my ruler out, 8.7 kilometers from the Russian forward positions. That is the Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk. Clean, pretty, and peaceful. And Russians want to come and destroy and turn it all to dust. Unfortunately, I cannot show you the dust that is left of Bakhmut, for example, because YouTube is very, very tricky on this. Sometimes it reacts very, very aggressively. Sometimes it just lets go. The point is that when we are talking about Ukraine giving territories to Russia, or Ukraine discussing some kind of a peace agreement for Russia, I want you to keep this in mind. I want you to keep and say that it is okay. Basically, what the people are asking, even the friends of Ukraine, when they're proposing something like this, is like, what they're stating is like, all of these peaceful cities that you have lost, that's it. You're not getting back. You are not getting those cities back. You're not returning the homes of the people that have been dislodged. You're not returning the peaceful life. You're not returning your rightful territories that are guaranteed by the international law. Nothing. It's all because the Western allies are not supplying enough weapons to Ukraine. Ukraine never asked for help from the allies. It's only said, just give us the tools to fight it. In my last video, I talked about that US has not been supplying as much equipment to Ukraine because their stocks were supposedly running dry. And the answer to that came in the comments section, where people said it's because of the US doctrine. It's because the doctrine states that US should have enough supplies to be able to fight two wars at the same time. That is the doctrine of United States. Therefore, the amount of so-called free equipment is not as big. And this is where I'm exactly getting at, is that allies, even the friends and everyone else around Ukraine, the European Union, United States, West, we do not understand that we are in war. Russia thinks we are in war. They're using their propaganda to fight us. But even us, even the president, politicians, whatever, they still do not understand that the time for us to prevent a potential war that United States would need to fight is now. So if United States, for example, would consider as like, well, instead of fighting that second war, why don't we just spend that resources that we have allocated to prevent it, and instead maybe buy some more new, build some more factories, that would make a lot more sense. And that's the point that I want to make too. Because here I want to read to you something very, very special from a Ukrainian fighter. And I think he tells it best. In the fact, the occupiers tried to repeat or pretend that it is not the 2024, but spring of 2022. He's addressing right now the Russian attacks all across the front line. To attack everywhere at the same time, they pulled up reserves, stockpiled ammunition and equipment, and rushed to assault. There are results almost everywhere, even if Chasiv Yar, where it seemed hopeless that they will just overrun the Channel district and get into the city itself. The fighting in New York is fierce. Toretsk is burning. The enemy has entered other cities and advanced to Vodina, which is near the Vuhledar around the south. These names will mean little to nothing to most people, and so I will summarize. Vuhledar is being taken into a pincer move. It's a very lousy situation. There is no strength to storm Pokrovsk for the Russians, but the city of Selidovo has been turned into a tough nut to crack for the Russians, and they are shifting their efforts towards the south, towards Kurakhova, which is south from Pokrovsk. Only when the emotions go away and you analyze the overall situation, you calm down a little. They have results, but very modest, incomparable with the resources invested. The armed forces of Ukraine again thwarted almost all of the enemy's ambitious plan. Minus 22 tanks and 1,500 personnel in a critical day. Fighting in New York, everyone remembered that not long ago it was completely occupied, and it was true. But now there are battles there again. We are back. In Chasiv Yar, they cross the channel every day and consolidate. This is true. Every other day, the new attack aircraft, a new fresh crossing point. Then we'll catch them with our 24th Brigade, clean them up, and return it back to the zero stage. And we do it every day. Who remembers that by September they were supposed to take Pokrovsk? You don't remember, but it was there. And the article in Times reprinted all channels everywhere about the occupiers taking Pokrovsk and going further towards Dnieper, towards Zaporizhia. Have everyone forgotten this? I lost my voice then, arguing that Pokrovsk and Mirnograd are beyond their reach, and there is no talk of further to the Dnieper. That's it. They've dug in their heels. They're still maneuvering, covering with what they can, but they've already realized the scale of the problem. Pokrovsk is beyond their reach. They have to look for options to advance further south to kind of consolidate and get some wins. And further south from Selidovo in 2 days didn't work out either. They are advancing very, very slowly, considering that the entire corps and tank forces were immediately thrown separately. So there is no catastrophe. The enemy has reached Pokrovsk and Selidovo, as we expected 2 or 3 weeks ago, and is forced to look for a hole to infiltrate again. There are Kurachovo and Vuhledar. The situation there is most hellish, the worst. They're breaking through to Vuhledar from 2 sides, and this threatens logistics, and the results will be predictably bad. And along Kurachovo, the terrain is against us because it is so flat. The town itself is squeezed between a local road with a reservoir behind it and a highway to Zaporizhia. However, the industrial zone of the thermal plant on the shore and the development can become a serious problem for any advancing forces. What I want to underscore here, again, this was the Ukrainian military. He's saying there is no catastrophe. Like, the situation is bad. Yes, but the price that Russia is paying is incredibly heavy. And this is where I do the full circle and we come back to the Petr Pavel's proposal. Because this proposal would essentially just give quote-unquote victory to Russia, because all these 2 years Russia has been moving and advancing thanks to the immense reserves and advantages that they had both in equipment, aviation, and their huge stockpiles of the Soviet equipment. Now we know that this equipment is running dry, and we know that the Western factories are finally kicking in, and Ukraine is finally getting some of their freshly produced ammunition. Petr Pavel is telling that he's a big friend of Ukraine because his initiative was really helpful to Ukraine. Well, in reality, shells from that procurement project have started arriving pretty late. They are actually started arriving arguably later, already when US even approved their agreement in the Congress to allocate more resources to Ukraine. And not only just US agreed to allocate, they started transferring some of their weapons. Moreover, there is still a lot of unallocated resources to Ukraine that is there. So when allies are stating that Ukraine should consider surrendering, then my question is, why are you waiting until Russia uses up all of these resources to start these weird negotiations when finally we are at potentially some of the point that Russian stockpiles can start potentially ending, and our stockpiles that were dry at the start of the war because we were not preparing for this, we built new factories, we made new preparations, we were setting it up. President Zelensky going to visit everyone. We're building up our capabilities. Ukraine is getting the F-16s that finally are there. Hopefully at some point the long-range restrictions that we imposed on ourselves will be lifted. Why in this stage, where finally there is a potential for Ukraine to overcome whatever Russia has been throwing at them, when warriors like this stating, we did all of this, we defended all of this, we thwarted all of the Russian plans, whatever they were hoping, any kind of big breakthrough, capturing Donbass in 2025, nothing. They captured only a portion of this, not even reaching Pokrovsk. Ukrainians understand very well that if they stop now, if they will back off, if they will say, that's it, we're going to stop at the current lines, then there will be no Ukraine left. If Ukraine stops fighting, then we will see as the country slowly dies. There is no future because there will be no investment. There will be no development. Ukraine right now is in a unique situation when there is maybe not as much as any one of us hoped for the will for Ukraine to fight. But the support for Ukraine is there. And Ukraine knows that if they try to stop, if they try to break through, even if Russia will not attack them again, just the threat of this happening will doom any potential future of the country. It will be a territory that no progress, no development, nothing will happen at. It's going to be impossible. And Ukrainians that lived through all of this, that saw their cities destroyed, that saw their friends killed, they will never, never, never forgive you, me, all of our leaders, or President Zelensky that he sold out Ukraine at the moment when it had the best and only chance at fighting. So my call is very simple. We need to do more. We need to do more. The whole fact that Ukraine did not receive the ammunition it needed, did not receive the resources we need, did not have the supplies that Ukraine need. We don't support Ukraine fast enough. We don't let Ukraine win. We don't let Ukraine strike the targets. It is us. We are preventing Ukraine from winning, and I say we should not do that. I think when we come with proposals like this, these proposals should be addressed to the Western powers for them to give the territory to Russia and not Ukraine. And to sum up today's video, maybe a bit emotional, I want to present you with probably the worst design form I've ever seen. But it's from the friend of the channel, Operator Starsky. He wants to do a bit of a study about the countries that you live in, about how you see the war in Ukraine and so on. What do you think about your government and information media space about in your country? So please check out the link, fill it in, trust in Ukrainian armed forces. I love you, and I'll see you next time.